Meet the Crew with your host, Lloyd Ellis.
Welcome again back to Meet the Crew. I'm your host, Lloyd Ellis. And on today's show, we have my good friend, Steve-O. Wait. Y'all don't know who Steve-O is. I do, because he's the most awesome. But I'm going to let the man introduce himself. Steve-O, you there?
I'm here, bud. How are you, Lloyd? Good to see you. This is Steve-O. I'm a tour manager. Been working in the industry for about 7 years now, but that's who I am. Most people know me as Steve-O. Nobody knows who my last name is.
Well, Steve-O, I'm going to call you Steve-O because that's how I know you, even though
Exactly.
Steve's his real name, Steven, but Steve-O is the man. And as you can see behind him in his office setup, he has done a lot. That is a presidential seal sitting behind you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Where are you from? Give us a little bit of back history. Like, where'd you grow up? How'd you get into this?
Well, I guess I would say I'm from Colorado. I spent my elementary school, middle school, high school years in Minnesota and Michigan, but I moved to Colorado after college and lived there for 24 years. So I consider Colorado home. That's where all my family is now. So
how did you get into this industry?
Well, I by accident, I guess, like a lot of people. I was working a corporate job in Denver, and I had some interest in concert lighting and got hooked up through a church that had built a brand new campus and was looking for someone to help with lighting. And I'd always had an interest in lighting. I'd go to shows and I didn't really care who the artist was, but if I liked the music or if I liked the lights, I'd just watch the lights. And so I started doing this at a kind of a mega church in Denver, and had a bunch of Christian artists that came through and had toured, and they're all like, well, if you want to tour, move to Nashville. And I'm like, I don't think I'm ready for that. And then through a set of circumstances, ended up in Nashville for a lot of site visits for an event that we were doing with the company I was working for in Denver. And every time I came down here, I'd reach out to somebody that I'd met and just say, hey, let's go to lunch. And basically got offered a job and decided, okay, it's my midlife crisis. Let's put the house on the market and just see what happens. And did that on a Friday. And on Tuesday, it sold for more than I was asking. And a month later, I moved to Nashville. So it happened very quickly.
Hey, we can't complain for coming up on real estate. That's how moguls make it, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of moguls, you've had a pretty interesting past life, correct?
That's correct.
Can you dabble a little bit for what you used to do, if I may ask, or would you rather keep that to yourself?
Oh, no, I don't mind talking about it. I worked for Dish, satellite TV company, and one of my jobs was the personal handler for the CEO. So multi-billionaire, basically just keeping him in check and in line, and then doing a lot of traveling. We did a big corporate event once a year. And basically, I managed, I guess, corralled all of the execs and any of the talent. So we'd have A-list entertainment and just making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be and doing that kind of stuff, which is where the presidential seal came from, working with the president.
So with that kind of gives me a great spot to segue into my next question. You're currently a tour manager, right? So basically, you were doing that for Dish. But
Correct.
Dish being a corporate company, they don't necessarily call it the tour manager.
Correct.
But in essence, it's pretty similar to what you do for recording artists nowadays, right?
Absolutely. And it was funny because when I first started, I was doing lighting. That's what I first moved to Nashville to do, was be a lighting guy. And I had an artist that reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in being my tour manager for a Christmas tour that was going on? And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I've never done that. And after the first week of being out on the road, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize it. But when I was at Dish, I was basically a corporate tour manager.
Most
And
definitely.
this is exactly what I should have been doing instead of having to be on a lighting desk and ask these 20-year-old kids like, hey, how do I fix this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. So it was definitely much easier to work into the tour manager role and feel comfortable.
So let me ask you this. For people out there that don't know, how long have you been doing this?
So I'm coming up on 7 years. I moved here in June of 2014. So I was a lighting guy for the first 3 years, and then last 4 years I've been a tour manager.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And you definitely, especially from the clientele that you work with, you're doing great things and people respect you in our industry. Now, with everything that's going on right now in society, we are currently still in this pandemic of COVID-19, in case anybody doesn't know what's going on out there in the world. How has that affected you professionally or even in your family, if I may ask?
Well, we were out on tour last spring, 2020. We were 6 shows into a 42-show nationwide tour, and loaded into Dallas and for a sold-out show. And at noon, the mayor of Dallas announced that no gatherings of over 500 people. So we basically packed up everything and thought it'll be a couple weeks and we'll be back out. Our booking agency went through and rescheduled those first 2 weeks, and we thought we were sitting good. We got on the bus, came back to Nashville, and we thought, well, we'll just sit this out for a couple weeks and see what happens. And now, over a year later, we're still sitting here.
Right.
So it's been tough. I would say, I don't know if you're into the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 2, which is a caretaker, or I want to be with other people and meet their needs and help them, a helper. And so I went from being out on the road, taking care of a whole tour of people, to sitting in my house by myself with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And mentally, that was tough, really, really tough. And at the beginning of COVID, everybody was saying, don't go out, don't go do this. I mean, they didn't even want you going to the grocery store and stuff like that. So it was pretty depressing, to be honest, just sitting in the house, just kind of looking out the windows, being like, all right, how soon is this going to let up? And, it got to a point where it loosened up a little bit and, you make things work. But a year later, still haven't gone back out on the road yet.
Yeah. And you're based out of Nashville, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
What's that like?
Here's the thing, and I think you know this too, Lloyd, from being in the music industry.
Yep.
You see all these people, and you tour with people like we toured together.
Yeah.
And you live on a bus and sleep 3 feet from somebody else, and you become really good friends with all these people. And you always say, hey, we should hang out sometime. And oh yeah, we live in Nashville. We all live in Nashville, or we're close to Nashville. We're 15 minutes away from these people that we love, and we love being around and hanging out with, and we've lived on a bus with. And then all of a sudden you come home and you're told you can't hang out with anybody.
Right.
And because our schedules are all so different. I mean, we may work in the same industry, but we're with different artists and different parts of the globe on different times of the day, and when we're touring. So you may not have that chance to hang out with your neighbor that lives 5 doors down, that works in the industry. But now you're home and you're ready to hang out with people, and you're being told you can't do that. So one of my buddies, he actually said, let's do a sidewalk hang. So we went and hung out in his driveway in lawn chairs, and we sat 6 feet apart. But that was like the first interaction that I had with an actual human being, probably a month into when we got shut down.
Right.
So it was rough, because you want to be around all these people. All of a sudden you're close to everyone. Everyone's home. Nobody's going anywhere, because you're all home in Nashville, but nobody's going to see anybody or hang out.
I get it, man. I get it. One thing that I can attest for, and you could probably attest for it too, is when we're out on the road together, we're with each other more than we're with our own immediate family 9 times out of 10. And a lot of people out there just don't realize that it's not just a job with us. It is a family, and the rapport that we have with each other, our industry as a whole, ranging from the people that work in the arenas to the artists that's on stage to the people behind the scenes in the management offices, it's all done on word of the mouth. You know, we don't have the luxury of just having that lobbyist out there for us, just saying, okay, we need to get this market going, we need to get that market going. It is us as a family getting the word out there. And that's kind of why I wanted to start this series, was to make sure that people out there know that, hey, there's people at home, there's families at home that are in our industry that need to have a place to get their voice heard. Let them know that, hey, there is a lot that's going on in this world. There are a lot of people that want to help. There are a lot of people that need a release, and that release would be from having live events, which is what we do. And until we can get out there and make a change or do something to nip this COVID in the butt, there's only so much that virtual events are going to do, you know, and
Sure.
a lot of people are struggling. And I wanted to be able to have a platform, which I have now, thank you, YouTube, to be able to let people's story be told, you know. And I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, to join us, to give people the chance to meet you, who are a leader in the crew. But let me segue to this. What are you currently doing, if I may ask?
Well, I'm just anxious to get back on the road, but what I'm currently doing right now, the artist I was with last spring kept us on retainer, so we were on retainer for through half of last year, and then I went unemployment, and unemployment ran out, and so I'm like, well, better find something to do. So what I'm doing right now, I've got my commercial driver's license, so I've been driving truck for Amazon, and everybody's like, oh, that sounds like a fun job, and it does get me out of the house, but the hours are pretty brutal.
Right.
I'm at work by 4:15 every morning, so I'm getting up at, my alarm goes off at 2:50 a.m. 5 or 6 times a week, and I work 10 to 12-hour days, driving within 150 miles of Nashville, so up into Kentucky, down into Alabama, and I'm doing that, and man, it's a job, and it's providing me some income, but it's not touring, and I can't wait to get back to touring.
Well, brother, I applaud you, seriously. And that's good information to know that currently you're driving, which isn't going to last long, because we're going to get back to hopping on these buses and these planes and stuff.
Absolutely.
If there's one thing that you might say to the world, what might that be right now?
I think what I'd say is, I think if you're not in the music industry, the entertainment industry, you may be working from home and your life may have changed a little bit, but you're still getting your normal salary and you're going on with your life, and it may be a little different, but it's still somewhat normal. But I think a lot of people have forgotten that we're not working. And if we're not working, we're not making money. And so, yeah, we're getting these stimulus checks and everything. In fact, I just got my stimulus check this morning, but that check isn't even half a week's pay for me. And if I've been out of work for 52 weeks, that stimulus money, it's a nice little bonus for maybe somebody that's working full time and still has their salary. But if you're not working at all, that money really doesn't do a whole lot for you. It probably pays some bills that you're behind on. And I think too, the other thing too is just what I've wanted people to know is that in this industry, we're very family oriented, like what you say with what, you know, who we're touring with and everybody, but we're not really seeing those people a whole lot. And so it can get lonely. Especially, I'm single, so I'm living at home by myself, so I'm not necessarily seeing a lot of people. And I think that the mental aspect is really important too. And I think something that I just said the other day to someone was, you know, we've got a lot of people that if you're out with a big artist and they know who you're with, they're going to hit you up and be like, hey, can I get tickets to your show? And they're going to be the first ones that are going to hit you up on that. But how many of those same people are hitting you up and saying, hey, I know you've been out of work for a year. How are you doing?
Right.
You know, So don't just be the person that's asking, hey, can I get tickets to a show? Also be the person that's being, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you out? And I think that's just an important thing to keep your crew and your tour people in mind.
Bro, that is amazing. Well, Steve-O, thanks again for joining us. It's been a pleasure catching up with you. It's been a pleasure being able to let the world know who you are and get a little bit of information about the myth, the man, the Steve-O. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Lloyd.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. This is Steve-O, and you've met the crew.
Meet the Crew with your host, Lloyd Ellis.